Fontainebleau, the homeland of my soul, the place where all the ritual firsts happened for me. I arrived there age 8. My teacher died when I was almost 18. And then I started teaching what she was teaching me right away, in a continuation, as if the soul has captivated the meaning and the spirit of the place, which I associated to the teaching of my teacher. Of course, it is the place to have met so many musicians, students, guests. It was like a marvelous moment if you wanted to immerse yourself in a musical bath, in the sense that you didn't have transports. You just had to walk in a beautiful castle, living as if in a theatrical decor, which as a child appeared to me almost unbelievably like in a fairy tale, honestly. And then the same time, the capacity to share music, compose music, hear it played, play with musicians, with students, music, ping pong, choir, experience Bastille Day in France for the guests who came from America, since I was sort of like the musical furniture of the place, since I was there every summer for a decade, the last decade of Mademoiselle Boulanger. And Mademoiselle Dieudonné was there as the guardian of Mademoiselle Boulanger, and we were like living in an outer time feeling. In a way, for me, it was fascinating, because all the students who came and left, or came back and left, grew up and were already, to me, old, but in the sense that they came in a transition of their own life, going through Mademoiselle Boulanger's inspiration and wisdom, while I was there from the alpha to the omega of my studies with her, since I grew up from childhood every summer there to become a young man and even get married in Fontainebleau, as well as continue to teach and perform there in her spirit. To tell you the truth, I was born, I live in different places, and that happens to most of us. But to have a place where the soul, the heart, the breath, as the Greeks in ancient Greece defined the place of the soul, the psyche, is Fontainebleau. And the memories of there are beyond only the memories of everybody's young age, which is always idealized in nostalgia. And it is true in part. I couldn't argue that. But I still find that the complexion of the place, the people who gave so much among the teachers and the students of their inspirations, juices, and everything was, of course, limited in time. And so it was intense, it was at the same time exhilarating. Of course, the combination of the gardens and the architecture and the history and the awareness, regardless of how much of all this history, and then the fact that the American students came in these French times where the globalization hadn't yet kicked in France, and there were customs and potage dinners with soup in the restaurant in the evening, and there was a sense of captivating something which, after all these horrible world wars of that century, could be brought in positive connection through music, through the timelessness of the treasures that music gave us, as well as the music that was created there, and that was in a sort of a tradition, since Mademoiselle Boulanger was so old in the 70s, while students who arrived there were already eventually students of students of students from 1921. It was sort of the grandchildren of Copland in generation, and all coming to the same source, Mademoiselle Boulanger, the source of harmony, of contrapoint, of fugue, of compositional emotion through creativity. It was not only theory, but also the grammar of music, as well as it was the moment to experiment and to feel free in terms of musical language and musical creativity with the performers who were students as well as the guests. And during this month of July and August, combined, the students participated in the city's life, sang in the church of the city, in which towards the end of August was the Saint Patron's feast, and the whole city was in a way responding, and the students were responding to the city through Mademoiselle Boulanger, and there was a sense of perhaps the last years of innocence, I would say, for me. Because I find that when you have grown up in a place where the intensity of the work equals the generosity of the teaching and the inspiration from the honesty of what you discover you could become. Some discovered they could become composers. Some came and discovered they could learn so much more through solfège. And so all over the place, they were singing and art songs and choir and Bach cantatas and analysis and evening concerts and afternoon master classes and piano practicing. And it's a beehive, an immersion of, it wasn't a retreat. It was very active, more than a retreat. The good part of it was that there was pastry shops, there was Odélice Imperial, where students would try to have something sweet after perhaps a bittersweet lesson, because on the other hand, Mademoiselle Boulanger's teaching was not sugar-coated at all. And Mademoiselle Dieudonné, with her solfège classes every morning, carrying an old-fashioned briefcase which was heavier than her, and dispensing her knowledge with such earnest honesty and goodness. Mademoiselle Boulanger with philosophy, with a certain elevation of the thoughts and the spirit that questioned us more than answered our questions, but which brought us to become so close to each other through the years after, that regardless in which time period some of us met in Fontainebleau, we carry something inside our soul that represents a timelessness of her giving to us, her curiosity for us, her desire to help us become in the future who we would like to become in terms of musicians, composers, conductors, theoreticians, possibly clinicians, performers, artistic, or just musicological, as well as becoming scholars, and not necessarily separately, sometimes combined. She didn't force, but she opened the minds. She opened the horizons to all of us, to each of us, not as a group while we were, but as individuals for whom she cared, for whom she tried, even those few hours of lessons during a summer, for people coming from so far away like America at the time, to receive from her a guidance and advice, and sometimes try to see if they can really follow it, because it wasn't always, as I said, sugar-coated, and it was not either ill intended to be just tough or rough for the purpose of it. He was like a philosopher. She was delivering a truth through her vision, her experience, and her intuition for students since Copland in 21 onwards. So how not trust her? While at the same time we had our own free will. We were not just there to receive the roadmap for the future of our lives. It was a little bit, perhaps now, in hindsight, it looks a little bit caricatural. But in fact, there was respect, there was fear, there was adoration, there was expectation, there was confusion, and there was self-search, and there was practicing early morning, late evening, during the day, sequences for theoreticians on the piano where you could become a keyboard harmony virtuoso, so to say. Of course, not right away, but at the same time, always bringing the quality attention to the listening, to the elegance of each phrase, of the how you shape the music of the others, how you invent the shapes of your own music. And it was not about right or wrong, short or longer. It was about advising you, as she did, to each of us for what we were yearning, how to better shape and develop what she sensed we had in us. And if our character or our drive or our doubts were bigger than the uphill for the let's say, talent that she might have discovered in us or deciphered through our early exercises or examples of production. I think we were there, all her students, and I think through life we continue to be her students by teaching her precepts, because they are timeless, because they work, because they represent the honesty of the connection between the soul, the creativity, and the mind. It's not about impressing with different styles or languages of musical genres, and it was more about revealing the true yourself. And she was so good at reading you as in somehow X-ray machine of your soul, revealing you to yourself. Now, you do or not go through the precepts of hers about what to do to develop it, but the fact that you were there in a place where we were, in fact, inspired by each other, late night doing exercises, early morning breakfast room, preparing for the lesson. These are nervous, these are excited, these are searching. We were in different seasons of our lives, of our yearnings, of our discoveries, of our hopes, of our disappointments, as well as of our achievements, present or to come. And it felt like we were there in a place where we had to capture every minute of it. It was like as if every minute something meaningful was happening through the guests she invited to teach, perform, or give public talks, as well as through the idea that her behavior as a musician in terms of her person being honest about her own works as a composer. Her sister, who was unfortunately no more there for a long time since she died so young, and her awareness of the true value of each and their progress or not. I think it was challenging, exciting, exhilarating, expensive, rare, and because of her late age in those years of Fontainebleau, of the 70s, it felt like every time, every summer, every lesson might be the last. And we all felt like we were going there, I think, to the well to for our thirst. And with this excitement and anxiety that we might be revealed that we are not perhaps called for that what we dream to become or to blossom into. And in a way, perhaps we knew before we went there what she would tell us, but we wanted to have a confirmation. And when it wasn't a confirmation, then it was even more driving and important, because it is those crucial moments that define a life's choices. And you have to do it in trust. And she managed to get the trust of so many people who came by for so few lessons, but at the crossroads of their own lives. And I find that the Fontainebleau coating of the place was sort of the marvelous combination for having the time and taking the time to self-search so much in depth without any excuse about being tired, being running for a transport, or being at a side job. It was expensive, but we were there for that, and I think we milked every minute of it, to the point to which decades later, regardless in which time period some of the students went there, they carried with them just like this kind of île joyeuse, literary idealization of the joyful island, more in the sense of jubilation and of exhilaration. And I find that those who have been there felt that. Of course, the friendships, the loves, the discoveries, the unrealistic dreams, and at the same time the opportunities to try things you've never dared, if you feel like somebody trusts you and believes in you that you can achieve it if you put yourself into it, and realizations of gaps to fill in different areas of our musicianship or know-how or technique. All this was Fontainebleau summers. Unforgettable. And for my so many, each was unique, and all together were like panorama of the soul.